Future gives you point of view and meaning. Hello, greeting from Indonesia. It's me, Gita. I'm the representative of the second Borobudur International Symposium on Humanities and Social Science, along with my colleagues. Our research about validation of the Indonesian version of the Future Time Perspective or FTPI scale study on a student sample. First of all, the Future Time Perspective, or will be called FTP, defined as individuals' view of personal future. Therefore, the future times itself helps people to planning their goals. There's also a growing attention in the future time perspective long last couple of decades, and mainly it's happened in the Occidental countries. FTP itself considered as the psychological variable because individuals' personal space also included time dimension, and time itself will give people to set their own goals and activities, and then individual needs to acknowledge their own pace in life based on the anticipation they perceive, or in this concept is future times. Typical measurement of FTP could be viewed as the unidimensional. It consists of the 10-item scales by Carson and Lang that indicated the FTP could be viewed as the unidimensional. On the other hand, many scholars suggest the measurement of FTP based on a multidimensional approach is the best to describe this concept. So it's become a contrary to the previous concept, which is unidimensional. There are several research that conduct by non-Western countries indicated a multidimensional approach along their result. Therefore, by developing an Indonesian version of the FTP will help future understanding of these concepts and also will validate the FTP itself. Our study aims to develop the Indonesian version of FTP scale using the translate-back-translate approach and investigate the psychometric properties. Therefore, these are the methods we are being used. The participants were 4,031 psychology students across the nations, which consists of 79% females and 21% males. The measure itself is using the future times perspective scale, the translated version of the Lang and Carstensen, and being translate back translate. And of course, the scale itself we use is FTP scale. The originate FTP scale was initially developed by Lang and Carstensen. The scale included the 10 items rate on 7-point Likert scale from 1 very untrue to the 7 very true. And then the last three items, the item 8, 9, and 10, coded reversed. The data itself collected by online survey due to the pandemic of COVID-19. So we use the information sheet consent form, demographic questions, and the translated version of the future times perspective scale were presented to the respondent. The study design itself is using the exploratory factor analysis or EFA to identify the underlying factor structures of the scale and analysis of the psychometric properties of the scale using the Cronbach alpha. The three indicators used for the factor retention is factor had initial eigenvalues more than 1.0, and then the changes point of inflection of the scree plot, and then parallel analysis or PA, the Horn's PA. And therefore, the method itself is using to do the validation of the FTP version of Indonesia, or we call it FTPI. By using the AFA, the 10 items of Indonesian version of Future Time Perspective Scale or FTPI is being conducted. All of the item is being used and all of the item is valid result in reliable and valid one. There are no missing data of the FTPI. The exploratory factor analysis is on using the SPSS version 25. The EFA analysis resulted in the two factors with eigenvalues over Kaiser's criterion of 1.0, which explain 50.59% of the total construct variability. And then there's no cross-loading of items across the other factors, so this two-factor solution was confirmed by the observation of the scree plot graph and the Horn's parallel analysis. The Horn parallel analysis itself was performed in this SPSS version of 25 using the syntax function, and then the simulation test provided the first two eigenvalues from the actual data was higher than those retrieved from the first three bootstrapping data. So the result is two-factor solution was confirmed. As the conclusion, the result demonstrated that FTPI was a reliable and valid tool. There's no missing data from the FTPI, so we are using all the 10 items for the Indonesian version. And then the AFA findings indicate that FTPI has two-factor structure consists of the 10 items, this means the scale was different from the original FTP, which said unidimensional. So we become one of the evidence that FTP is using the multidimensional approach. The two eigenvalue from the actual data emphasize the limited and future factors. So there are two factors from the eigenvalue itself. It's grouped in limited and future factors. And then it's the best measure FTP of Indonesian context. The first factor was defined by items describe opportunities of the future outcomes. And then the second factors define the limited perspective of time. The two factors was remarkably distinct. So the 7 items showed substantial loading of the future outcome factor. And then the other 3 related to the limited times perspective. And there are some limitations that we identified from this study. The first one is the homogeneity, because the limitation of our attempt to generalize this FTP, because the characteristic, it should be broader range in order to do the generalizing. And then the second one is we need the diverse generation to do the further exploration about the times perspective itself, because time or the FTP could be used to evaluate the various life contexts through the lifespan. So it's not just in some area of age, or not in only in one range of age like students, but it could be used to more various age. And then finally, the further post hoc analyzing using CFA might strengthen the validation of the tools. The CFA model will explain whether the two factors are better fit with the data rather than the one-factor model. So in summary, this study provides evidence supporting the psychometric property of FTPI scale. And then the findings support the explanation of the multidimensional approach that we use in Indonesia. Thank you for all participants.